Are we live? We are live. What is happening, everybody? So, yeah, it is day whatever of the quarantine. Happy whatever day it is to you out there in the wild, wild world that we're now living in. So, I got to tell you guys, I'm a bit fired up this evening, mainly because I've been going through and trying to catch up on some comments. And I like to try to get to as many comments as I can. I typically don't like to spend too much time really hanging on one comment or another, but every once in a while, one will actually pop up, it'll catch my attention, and it will just kind of fly in the face of some of the things that I had done leading up to this point. You know, a lot of the experience that I've had has come with specifically Mopar related things. And yes, I've got some experience with the LS stuff and the Coyote stuff as well. But the main thing is, well, to be honest with you, I've got a lot of experience with all of these cars. So the issue that I've got, what's up, TU? What's up, Rip? But the issue that I ran into was just in some of the comments, it's pretty funny. These guys almost sound like shills for the aftermarket. I feel like I'm getting kind of tongue lashed by folks that are in the aftermarket saying when I have given advice or when I've said that, well, perfect example of this, long tubes don't work on a 6.4, certainly don't work on a Hellcat. When I've said that cold air intakes, not really worth your money. When I've talked about all the different things and really the different areas where I've jumped in is really trying to help guys save money in their efforts at making their car truck go a little bit quicker. And the funny thing about it is it never fails. I get folks that will comment on my channel saying something to the effect of, I don't know what I'm talking about, that long tubes make 30 or 40 horsepower, it's proven, or cold air intakes make at least 10 horsepower to the rear wheels, don't they? I mean, that's what they say. This air intake gives you 25. Look, man, if you believe that kind of stuff, then by all means, spend the fucking money, buy the part, put it on the car, and run it. Please, but do me a solid. Take the thing to the dyno, take the thing to the drag strip, if you can. I know drag strips aren't really everywhere. And of course, drag racing isn't everybody's cup of tea. But if you're going to run your mouth about how well a certain modification is supposed to work, then be prepared to put your money where your mouth is, because the aftermarket has got plenty of folks out there. They pay marketing guys big money to make you, the consumer, believe that that part is going to wake up your car. I've got news for you. It will not. And at least not in stock form. Now, I don't know if you can hear this, by the way, but the car is still ticking behind me. I just got back from driving. But here's the thing. In my experience, and especially considering the fact that at Pikes, I was the guy running the dyno, doing all the preliminary data logs on the car. So that meant that I drove everybody's hot rod, whether it was a truck, a Restomod, Challengers, Chargers, Hellcats, repower in a Jeep. Supercharger install, could be a Vortec, could be a Pro Charger, centrifugal style. Vortec just stuck in my head because I was talking Mustangs earlier. It could be a Whipple install on anything. Can we put Whipples on practically everything? Same with Pro Chargers. I've driven them all. I've dynoed them all. I've tuned some of them. Anyway, long story short, it's not like I've got a small amount of experience with any of this, especially from experience beforehand. The funny thing is when I'm drawing on my experience to give advice, that experience is real world application, not somebody's hopes and dreams in a marketing blurb. I'm talking about on the dyno. I'm talking about at the drag strip when guys wouldn't want to take their cars to the drag strip, didn't trust their skill set, wanted somebody with a lot of experience in racing. I'm the guy that would get the call to drive the cars down the track. So somebody wanted to get a number out of the car, I'm the guy that they would call. The long and short of this is that I kind of come from a place where I know the fuck I'm talking about. So when somebody starts to say, well, I saw such and such and they said that they got whatever out of it. Bravo. Spend your money. Spend that money, please. And then take it to a dyno, take it to a drag strip. Go roll racing with it. Do whatever you want to do. But don't come at me with your feelings. Don't come at me with your beliefs or your hopes. Because I got news for you. Facts don't give a fuck about what you believe or what you hope or what you were told. Facts are what they are. And the funny thing is that people find out about just how much they got lied to about the time that, oh hell, I don't know, about the time that Shalandra would put a backhanded ass whipping on long tube, wrong cammed 392s. Happened all the time. Happened on the street. Happened on a roll race. Happened at the drag strip. You name it, I was slapping fools upside the head with Shalandra. And what was her combination? My little touched up intake, which was really more blueprinted than anything else because I really didn't hit the throat with that until later on in that car's life, so to speak. Stock cam, a tune, stock manifolds, and a cat delete, which a car didn't really need, and that was it. So if that's the case, why is it that my car was faster than cars with long tubes, ported intakes, ported throttle bodies, in some cases camshafts, comp 270. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it's comp 274, wrong cam in a 392. Why is it that that car was faster as an SRT, not a Scat Pack Core, which is kind of what I wanted to buy to begin with, but as an SRT, the tank of the group? How is it that that car was faster? How is it that in some cases, cars got quicker when the long tube headers were taken off of them? Happened a couple of times, by the way. Explain some of that to me if you don't mind, because I am fascinated by the logic that's gone into a lot of this. And so I guess the point that I'm getting to here is, if you haven't noticed, it kind of gets me fired up a little bit when I see guys coming back at me telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about, when I've kind of made a business out of showing fools my taillights that have spent way more money on their car than I did with a tune that it's a 93 octane tune with my transmission tuning, a lot of transmission tuning, but still we're talking about transmission tuning, not engine tuning. How is it that Shalandra was waxing that ass and nobody seemed to notice and nobody seemed to care when that car went 1130s, full weight, on 20s? I got accused of spraying it. I got accused of running a 370 gear. I got accused of that car being gutted, which it wasn't, which I should have done because that sucker would have gone probably 11 O's or 11, at least 11 teens. So, and by if there's any correlation here, that's also when Jimmy's car went 1125. Same thing. When other cars with long tube headers were doing great just to try to run 1130s in equal DA. Just saying. These are all stock cam cars too, by the way. None of this has anything to do with if you go with an aftermarket camshaft. What with the fact that the manufacturers don't talk about aftermarket camshafts. The aftermarket manufacturers are talking about their part picking up this power. Nevertheless, the fact that you've got to still tune for that particular part, still talking about long tubes here, to get the most out of it, never mentioned, is it? Yet all of these parameters have to be met. Aftermarket camshaft, obviously the tune to go along with it, plus the long tube headers, I'm sure a cat delete along the lines as well. Taking into account the fact that the SRT, or should I just say 392 and SRT exhaust for the 5.7s is all straight through. Then in that case, sure, you might see 25 horsepower. Near about what you'll get with a tune a real nice aggressive tune. So that's kind of the point here. The issue is that when you're looking at what parts work on 392s, 57s, things like that, I'm coming at it from a place of experience, not from a place of speculation. I'm not coming at it from a place of, well, I know that back in my grandpappy's day, back when engines had nothing to do with what they are now, I ain't coming from it from that point of view. I'm talking about modern Hemis here. We're not talking about LSs. We're not talking about Coyotes. We're not talking about any of that. It's called Mopar Chat Live. It says it right here on the shirt. It says it on the thing. But the problem is that people get convoluted. They get bamboozled, and it's not their fault. Well, it is. See, let me tell you how it is their fault. Ignorance. Root word, to ignore. To actively not see the other side of an argument, to ignore it. To actively dismiss something is to ignore it. Ignorance, the act thereof, to ignore. It takes effort to be ignorant, because if you don't look at the other side of the argument and you only accept what you're being told, then you deserve whatever ass whipping that a Shalandra like my car would do, because you've never thought to ask the questions. Maybe you don't know to ask questions. The problem is, if you're going to start spending money, this kind of money, by the way, you know, how much money does it cost to put long tubes or ported manifolds, ported throttle bodies, tuning, all this other stuff on these cars? It's expensive, right? If you're going to go blindly into that and just believe everything that the marketing is telling you, and believe everything that some of these nefarious shops are going to tell you along the way, maybe you deserve to have that money stripped out of your back pocket. In fact, maybe that'll be enough of weight savings to get the car to run quicker, because from what I've seen, by the way, with some of these shops that have gone in and absolutely just for lack of a better way of term, raped some of these customers, and the stuff that we would see come in the shop, and you just fixing the problems like hanging a fucking shower curtain. I mean, it don't matter where you start, man. You just start fixing shit left and right. It's eventually going to all get put up, but my God, you just don't know where to start. It's like shark in a school of mackerel, man. So these are the guys that I feel sorry for. These are the guys that I actually have a little bit of empathy for, because nothing sucks worse than going into this hobby, or finding yourself in this hobby. Sorry, little bugs flying around everywhere. Then taking your car to a shop, basically getting fleeced out of your funds, taking your car to a drag strip, only to find out that there are stock cars that are quicker than you are, and wondering what the fuck just happened here. Happens to happen a lot. And when I'm giving advice, I'm saying, look, unless you put a cam in the car, or unless you're planning on doing this, that, I mean, I'll freaking line it out for you, what you need to get in terms of getting one of these modern Mopars down the track and down the street as quickly as possible, but the most effective and the most efficient way possible. And it's funny, because the backlash from me saying that something doesn't work, these folks are taking this so seriously and so unimaginably personally. It's interesting that when these guys start believing this, it's like an affront to their own well-being, that, oh my God, I feel like I've got to really defend my ground. I've got to stand my ground, make sure I'm, really fighting back on this, because this guy may be right and I might have gotten screwed over, and I don't want to seem weak-minded or weak, or I was taken advantage of, or whatever. Man, look, I've been fighting that fight for a while. And that's, to my point, finally getting to it 14 and a half minutes into this, of why I don't have any sponsors. At least no sponsors to speak of. I mean, I've never even been approached, but I can probably guess why. Look at it like this. I've done real product reviews on this channel. I've done cold air intakes. I've done porting. I've done dyno talk, dyno chat, when I'll be at the shop and it'd be a little bit slow at lunch or whatever. pull up different dynos and just showing you, hey, this is this car versus that car. This is this mod versus that mod, showing you real modifications on the dyno. And sometimes it wasn't all that flattering. But I'm not here to bullshit you guys. I'm here to give you real advice with real parts that work and to save you money along the way, keep you happy with your project, and let you know that, look, if you buy this cold air intake for your Hellcat, it's not necessarily going to pick up power, but it's there for the theater. It's there for the noise. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a fun idea. I've even stated on here that I may even do it for my car just to have it along for the ride. In a car, you don't get any real noise because you can't really hear it, and you don't really pick up any power. And I've laid out why. I've laid out in detail why, primarily because the camshaft profile in these Hemis has such a wide LSA, why you don't see so many of these long tube header options work that well. There's just not enough time for scavenging to take place. Oh yeah, and I'm the guy that developed the camshaft protocol for Pikes, and I'm the guy that works with Doc Diff on his custom grinds. So I kind of know how that works. But more to that point, see, the thing is that when I've done those product reviews, not one of them has made power. Not one of them has gone quicker in the quarter mile by enough of a margin to justify the dollars and cents that you threw down. Not one of them has shown any real gain at the drag strip. You know, like when you're driving the car and not on a dyno. That's the other thing. A lot of guys really don't understand the difference between dyno and real world. They think that dyno horsepower, like this big gain on the dyno, is going to equate to something in the real world. And unfortunately, you can manipulate the numbers, not just in real terms, like you can manipulate the numbers in the dyno, but you can take these numbers, and if just taking the numbers at their own merit can mean something that they actually don't. Perfect example of this. Take a car hot off the street, throw it on the dyno. Dyno it. We're dynoing this thing today. We're going to do this modification. We're going to dyno it again. Okay. Take the car right off the street, set it on the dyno, get it centered. This takes time. Car's running. Heat soak. More to the point, cats are staying hot. Cat overtemp protection comes into play on those runs. And guess what? The car puts down lower numbers than it normally would because, yes, it's stock and it went into cat overtemp. The car is sitting on the dyno. We put this cold air on it. And as it's sitting there, it's cooling off. Cats are cooling off. You put your cold air on the car, get back in it, say it cools off for 15 minutes while you're doing this test. Car picks up 10 horsepower. How in the world, man, that cold air intake just picked up 10 horsepower with a fan blowing over the top of an open element air filter, with the car cooling off to the point where it doesn't go into catalytic converter overtemp mode, which typically means it throws about 10 to 1 AFR at it. And I don't mean 10 point something, I mean 10 to 1. I've seen them go into the 9s. All of this stuff takes place, but the part made all the power, right? No, the part didn't make shit. If anything, if you tested it number for number, talking about coolant temperature, oil temperature, all of that together, chances are it may only make the exact same power, or it may lose power. I've seen cars go slower with cold air kits, not because there's a difference in the air charge at speed, but because the air charge temperature was so high at launch that you got into your hot spark table, which yanks timing out of it. And so when you go to shower down on the throttle at launch, you're not coming into the fight with the same amount of timing that you would have with the stock air box. Cold air intake could have been the best intake in the world, but if there's no timing there to make the power, then guess what? You lost power at the launch where you need torque the most, and you don't have it there. And so the vehicle goes slower. See, that's how it happens. That's how the numbers lie. And unfortunately, people are ignorant enough to believe what they're told. Just believe what they're told. The fucking Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, all these fairy tales, characters that are guilty of B&E and burglary. Yeah, those are the things that you're believing in, and you will still refuse to let that go when it comes to cold air kits, long tubes, and all this other stuff making huge power. Again, I've seen them lose power. I've seen them go slower, and I've also seen them go about the same speed going down the freeway with a roll race. In very few instances have I ever seen anything pick up any real power, unless we're talking about the 5.7, because the 5.7 comes with horse shit parts to begin with. So little wonder why any minor improvement on a 5.7 would do well. It comes with log manifolds, shitty catback, and everything else included in terms of heavy, being a heavyweight. Then of course the 5.7 is going to do well. The parts suck to begin with. But when it comes to a 6.4, it's tough. So let me tell you what does work. Long tube headers work great at picking up a little bit of peppiness under partial throttle and building torque way down low. I've shown that. I've put 93 octane long tube header dynos up against my 392 and have shown it. So that's the issue that I've run into, is that when I see folks saying, well, this you're full of shit because you don't know about this and about that. It's more annoying, and it's annoying to the point where, why am I even doing this shit anymore? If you believe what you're told by all the aftermarket manufacturers, please, by all means, spend your money, because those folks got to eat too, right? At least they're supporting the hobby on the Mopar side, right? That's about the best that I can say about it. I mean, we're only how many years into this Mopar thing, and the aftermarket has only birthed us, 2 intake manifolds? One is specifically for built engines turning about 7,500 RPM. The other one is a minor upgrade. He's talking about the Edelbrock Victor now. The first one was the Holly. The Edelbrock is a minor improvement over the 6.1 manifold, and it's a lump of aluminum sitting on top of your engine as opposed to the active 6.4 manifold, or at least the somewhat acceptably performing 5.7 manifold. But the problem is that there is no support when it comes to manifolds, let's be real. Long tubes are, everybody makes a long tube header because they're an easy sell, because old school flavor will tell you that works every time, right? I mean, if old school mentality worked, I guess, long tube headers are great, but this isn't old school. This isn't an old carbureted V8 sitting behind me. And believe me when I tell you, the OE's done a pretty good job of sorting these Mopars out. Where the LS and the Coyote lack, let's just say that the Mopars threw all of their know-how into these things. And so it is very difficult to pick up power. But anyway, I'm 23, almost 24 minutes into me running my mouth. Let's see what you guys have to say real quick before I keep going. Mike Corleone saying, good evening, Professor Mason. Got the arm flex. I like it. Dallas Walter saying, hey, B, Destroyer 13 saying, what's up, man? Destroyer 13 saying, hit like on the way in. Yeah, y'all hit like too. Jerry 1320 saying, checking in, B, what up? Got the arm flex. I like it. CJ Coleman saying, B Mason, what's up, brother? How's it going? Got any plans from the 72 GMC C25? Yes, I do. I'll get back to that here in just a little bit, but she needs new leaf springs and she needs new rotors. So it'll be rotors, leaf springs, bearings, a new rebuilt transmission because the Turbo 350 in it is fried. And I'll be partnering up with Justin, Dr. Diff, to be getting a lot of that knocked out. So definitely looking forward to it. I'm going to leave the 430 gears in it for now because it looks like I might be going LS swap, but we'll get back to that here in just a little bit. Tan saying, B Mason spitting that truth. I appreciate it. T saying, be your spokesman for us. If that costs you sponsorships, and so be it. Stand on the truth and let the chips fall where they may. Absolutely. Look, that's kind of what I've been doing. And again, why don't I have sponsorships? I think if that first monologue wasn't a reason enough for a sponsor to not want to come my way, then I don't know what would be. And I'm just going to tell you the truth, guys. I mean, I'm not here to try to bullshit you. Ain't nobody paying me. I bought all of the parts that I bought, and believe me when I tell you, it's cost me a pretty penny to do so in the process. And yeah, it's a write-off, and yeah, the channel has to pay for that kind of stuff. So, but especially earlier on, this channel wasn't there yet. In fact, it still isn't really there yet. To be able to afford a lot of the things that I'd like to test, or a lot of things that I wanted to test. But let's just know this coming into it. Working at the shop, free access to lifts, labor, all the tools you could ever want. I still have basically free access to the dyno. And I still didn't put long tubes on Chalandra. I'm not putting long tubes on the Hellcat. That should tell you something. Getting parts at cost, still doing all of that. And I'm still not doing that kind of work to my car. Doesn't that tell you enough already? Can that please tell you all you need to know about how some of those parts work or don't work? These are the things that would drive me absolutely nuts. Anyway, getting back to it, I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. We're saying only got the intake for my Hellcat for more supercharger whine. Absolutely, man. Listen, I'm a big fan of that. I love the noise. I love the theater of it. That's a huge thing for me, as a matter of fact, is extracting the whine out of it. So, the great idea. You're not buying it because you think it's going to make more power. You're buying it because it's going to make it more fun. That's all that matters, is having fun with these things. Jerry saying if people actually watch your vids, they would know you actually did data logging in comparison. Yeah, I know, but that's the thing. I mean, you know, it's true stuff. But again, there's a lot of videos there. Some Ferrari guy saying thoughts on wheel spacers. Lowered my car and I see 25 millimeter spacer looking nice, but also hear some horror stories for them not being installed properly. Wheel spacers, you got to get the bolt-in wheel spacers, man. I don't like the just slip-on style. So there's that to consider. Not really knowing the offset of the wheel that you're looking at or what you're looking to do with the car. All I can tell you is you are putting extra load on the bearings. It's an independent rear suspension car, so you're putting extra load on the suspension, which means that you're going to have more camber. You're going to have to get the car realigned. I know you don't like hearing that, but that's just the truth behind it. So what are my thoughts on them? They're appropriate in some areas, but just make sure that if you're talking about on one of these platforms, if you do them, bolt in only and get her aligned when you're done. Queasy saying, well said. Thank you much. To you, amen. I like it. Queasy facts. B Mason's going in straight fire. I love it. Thank you, Arthur. CJ is saying advertisers can be very sketchy. Advertisers are sketchy. There ain't no can be. There ain't no might be. There ain't no sometimes they are. They are sketchy. That's their job. And they do a great job at it. CJ saying for the 392, it's better to leave them stock. In a lot of cases, I will agree. You're saying, hi, can you still use 93 octane with 13.1 compression? Absolutely you can. However, you will not have a whole lot of timing in that engine. So what you pick up in compression, you will probably lose with your tune, because instead of, say, 16 degrees of timing, you're going to have to come in at 14 degrees of timing, which is going to kind of kill the power in that area. Let's just say that if we're talking about 392s, they're already basically 11-to-1 as it sits. So it's not going to, it wouldn't be worth it anyway, power-wise. Now, if you want to run race gas, different story. But if you're going to run race gas, don't run 93. I'm sorry, if you're going to run race gas, don't run 13-to-1, run 15-to-1. CJ saying also money your vehicle will void your warranty as well. Very true. To you saying at CJ Coleman, it's better to leave the exhaust manifold stock, but it's not better to leave the entire car stock. Yeah, tune, cat delete if you just want to. Intake if you're looking for just like the pop at a car meet or something like that. If that's the case, then fine, go for it. But just when it comes to the power numbers, that's to pull your hair out part of it for me. Let's see. Oh, Rift is saying, oh, here we go. Rift saying, I feel like the cars like the 392 and the Hellcat were designed damn well already. They like to tout how much power they have, so why would they not design it well in the first place? It doesn't mean that some mods won't help, but I feel what you're saying. Yeah, so to that point, they did a great job with the 392. Look at it like this. 6.4 versus 6.2. Displacement is negligible difference here. 6.2 makes what? 455 horse? 485. It's another 30 horsepower. That's a big difference between the two. You can chalk that up to manifolds. You can chalk it up to better flow through the heads. Really, it's less pumping loss with these heads. You can chalk that up to a lot of different things. But the fact remains that at basically the same power, or the same displacement, it's not the same power. And it's very well sorted. So when you do things to like an LS, for example, everybody likes talking about the LS or LT1. When you do things to those cars, they're already coming at it from a farther deficit. So you start throwing cam timing into those cars the way you would throw cam timing at these. Yes, you're going to see a bigger gain with an LS. Why? Because it's starting off with less fucking power than the 392 is. The head flow is, they all flow really well. Yeah, the Hemis are better, but I mean, we're talking about all these new cars have heads that flow like race heads used to flow back in the day. So it doesn't matter. Anyway, I could go on and on about that, but let's keep going here. Robert's checking in saying, hi. Hello, Robert. Queen's saying shower curtain. That's big facts. Man, I'm telling you. And it's no joke. So many different things to do, so many different, just the way the only way I've been able to manage some of the multitasking and some of this craziness, shower curtain. Shower curtain, got to put the shower curtain up. Doesn't matter where you start, just start and don't stop working until the thing is up. It don't matter if the shower curtain's as wide as a football field. You just keep hooking hooks. That's it. Keep working and it gets done. But don't stop, because it will not be done until the last hook is up. B5, what up? B Mason, what up, B5? Some Fryer guy saying, I've been surprised with my JLT CAI. My IATs are always 8 to 10 degrees hotter than the ambient air temps. That's actually not too bad. Where the cold air deal gets you, again, is not driving down the road. It's not any of that. It's if you're into drag racing. And it's in that moment where you launch the car. I've got data logs on this, for fuck's sake. And that's the other thing too. Guys saying that I don't know what I'm doing when I've got data log after data log after data log after data log after data log, and I've got hundreds of passes down the drag strip. So many data logs that I went through in my older computer. I just started deleting data log. I had no reason to keep a lot of the data logs. And it was just file after file after file after file. These are data logs that I would do as I made the pass just to check data, and then, but I didn't name them or save them. Let me rephrase that. They automatically save. I just didn't name them. And it's easy to tell those files because they're always like, I don't know, 600 kilobytes. Anyway, log after log after log after log. And so anyway, I guess the point that I'm getting at there, sorry, good squirrel. But you would see these real high intake air temps because as you're sitting there ready to stage the car, you've done your burnout. And if the car is sat idling for any real length of time, the fans have already kicked on. You're getting a lot of fan wash into the filter. The filter is just sucking in the hot air specifically because of the fan wash. And you're seeing the manifold air temps start to go up. After the manifold air temps start to get to around, say 130 degrees, 140 degrees, you start on this slippery slope where you're falling into the hot spark table. The farther you fall into the hot spark table, the more timing that it takes out. So at some point, you're sitting there, go to launch the car, you're in the hot spark table, no timing, at least not the same amount of timing that you would have had. And that is across the board. That's a global thing. So that's even at the transition on rolling into the throttle. So you're losing, there is a period of time you can stand on the gas. There's still that fraction of a second where you're still in partial throttle. Although there is anyway, it's called bobble torque, and I won't even go into that. Anyway, where it also retards the timing even farther when it sees fast transitions on the throttle. So that point being made, that's where that cold air intake screws you, because you've got timing being pulled out because of bobble torque. You've got timing being pulled out because that's going to happen anyway. But compound that with the fact that you're going into hot spark, and that it's going to take a minute for that thing to cool down once you're going down the track. That's a bit of a problem, and that's where I've seen them slow down. Now, you can manipulate them to where they work well. Keep the hood up all the way till the car gets to the staging lane. Make sure the car cools off. Get you some fans. There's ways to make them work, man. That's the thing. But guys don't know how to make them work. They're not taught how to make them work. And they end up hurting them in terms of pulling power out of them. And then they think, oh my God, there's something wrong with my car. Fred's car is stock and it's quicker than mine, and I don't understand, and I got screwed on this. Yeah, you did. Yeah, fucked. And that's what bums me out, because we would do at Pikes such an effort went in to try to educate. Such an effort goes into try to bring that customer, so to speak, into the knowing of how this stuff works. I got to be honest with you. After a while, you just say, fuck it. I don't fucking care anymore. These people don't care. I don't care. And that's where the problem really starts with a lot of these other shops. At Pikes, it's not like that at all. Try to keep educating. Try to keep bringing folks into an educated understanding of why we're saying this part works, that part doesn't work. This is what we can show you. We've got drag strip data. My phone rings. We've got dyno data. Get on, Mustang dyno, pull up different cars, show you what works. That's what you got to do. That's what you try to do, to give people real world results with real world experience that is honest. And a lot of shops, man, they start off life doing that, and then there's only so many times. I mean, you can't take a freaking 2x4 and beat the waves down. It doesn't work like that. And that's what it ends up feeling like, with people saying, well, so-and-so picked up 40 horsepower with long tubes. I've got a freaking 2x4 and I'm hacksaw Jim Dugan with this goddamn wave, and it just will keep coming and keep coming. No matter how hard I hit the ocean, it always comes back. And that's the thing. Never heard anybody complain when they've gone down, the right path. Not to say the mistakes haven't been made, but when folks take the right advice with these Mopars, they run so good. But you start taking bad advice, again, I've said this so many times, go against the recipe, that's when it'll sting you. And that's the other side of it too. Again, circling back to the whole original point of why I don't have advertisers, why I don't have sponsors. Who would want me to be talking about their product? I mean, if somebody sends me a product, which nobody has ever done, by the way, if somebody were to send me a product and I give an honest assessment of the merits of that particular product, if it works, great. Coming from somebody like me, if I say something works, it's been track tested, it's been data logged, it's been dyno tested, it's had all of these tests done to it. No manufacturer is going to do that. No manufacturer is going to stand by their products like that. What they're going to want is they're going to want somebody that is going to just expound upon how good that particular thing is, that widget is, and only take their word at face value, that they're not filling you full of bullshit when they tell you what that thing is that they're trying to sell you. So again, I get it. And it's my experience that when somebody is really trying to sell you a product, there's a reason why they're really trying to sell you a product normally. So, oh, and that's another thing. When it comes down to, what products do I recommend or what services do I recommend? It's only because my experience has shown me that service or that particular part has proven itself to be a solid modification or a solid service. Pike's Performance Tunes for tuning and working on these modern cars in general. Absolutely good. I should know. I work there. The Fastman throttle bodies, another one. Great quality. Things seem to work. Bolted right up. Made a little bit of power. Car ran great. How do I complain about that? So of course I'm going to prop them up. And that's the Nitto tires. I really, if anybody should sponsor me, it should be Nitto. Jesus Christ, I've bought so many Nittos to begin with. I got more experience with Nittos than any other tire on the planet. Anyway, I digress. So those are the only three things that I can think of that I've ever actually said work. I mean, there's other things I'm sure, but the reality is that those are the three that come to mind right now. But that's another reason why there's no reason for me to, for anybody to send me their stuff, because I'm going to tell the truth. And a lot of times telling the truth gets people a little bit butthurt. Let's see, CJ saying, right to you, now the 5.7 Hemi V8 can make more power with long tubes, ported 392 intake manifold. Yeah, and that all goes back to the stuff I was saying before about, look, the 5.7 is just coming into the fight at a deficit already. I mean, I get manifolds suck, intake manifold, it probably needs a little bit of work, you know what I mean? But there's ways to get that 5.7 woken up, whereas the 392 already has all those parts. So, but damn, they work good on a 5.7. Riff's hanging out with some Ferrari guy. CT saying, indeed, at CJ, the 5.7 stock exhaust manifolds are terrible. Yeah, they are. If I had a 5.7, I'd go long tubes, try to find a set of SRT manifolds as well. And that's what I would do. I mean, I've given you guys the recipe as far as what I would do to a 5.7, man. I mean, there's a couple of different ways I would go, but on the exhaust side, anything is better than what you got already. So in that case, yeah, it's going to need some help. Let's see. CJ's saying his mom's got a 2010 Camaro Rally Sport with a 3.6. Planning on adding some Flowmaster Outlaws and swapping out. Let's see. Oh, talking about swapping out that thing with an LS. Well, that'll work out pretty good, actually. Let's see. Ruth saying, I also saw Santa having an affair with my mom. Well, Santa gets around, bro. I mean, who could say no to Santa? If you're a chick, man, and basically the dude's got it all. I won't go down the whole riff, but I mean, he sneaks into your house, got a bunch of stuff he's giving you for free. Sounds like anyway. Let's see. Riff. Why not to say, what it be? Yeah, I have to agree with why many people believe anything they hear. A big problem in the world today. Yeah, it is. T, you got the hand slap, high five, CJ. So look, here's the thing. For the most part, there are some aftermarket manufacturers that I would believe and that I do believe in. Comp cams, obviously, would be a big one because they have an established track record that have spent money on R&D to try to get what they can out of these modern Hemis. But the problem is that the trail starts to run cold real quick here. Cooks, long tubes, great headers, but my God, the cost of these things, right? I mean, again, you start looking at the cost, looking at the game versus cost, and then it's not like these things are super easy to work on either. We're not talking about, a 70s era Monte Carlo. These things are kind of a bitch to play with. So there's that to consider as well. I guess the full hit of this is you want to think that what you're doing to your car based on the money that you're spending is going to yield some marketable gain, right? And really, if you're going off the $100 per horsepower, more or less basic formula, then what you're seeing is, in other words, if you do whatever modification you do to a vehicle, it's usually about $100 per horsepower. But the problem is with these modern cars, modern Hemis especially, that formula doesn't end up working out. You've got $1,200 for a set of headers, $1,400 for a set of headers, whatever. You've got probably $300, $250 to install them. So you're looking at $1,700 just walking out the door. What happens if you don't pick up that 17 horsepower? Especially if it is a tuned car. In fact, if it's a tuned car, it could actually maybe lose 1 or 2 at peak. Now, you'll pick up torque, don't get me wrong. And when we're talking about losing power at peak, dude, at 1 or 2 at peak is nothing, especially if you picked up, say, 6 or 8 foot-pounds of torque across the immediate portion of your torque curve. So the car is going to feel better under partial throttle. And anytime you see a gain at low RPM, it means throttle response has been improved, which long tubes actually do. But when we're talking about numbers, actual numbers, advertised numbers, numbers that you see and the numbers that cause you to buy the part that you're looking at, and you don't see them when you place those parts, when you place your credit card at the machine and you get that dyno sheet back. When you don't see those numbers, you're not going to be too happy about it. And you're really not going to be happy when the guy across the desk goes, well, you know, some cars are different. Some cars pick up this, some cars do that. No, you're looking for a solid number. And it's not how it works. And you don't get those advertised numbers to the rear wheels. And you can't back math it to even try to justify or rationalize to yourself that number to the flywheel. In other words, you add your 15%, divide by 0.85. Actually, you don't add, multiply by 1.15. Please, by the way, motherfucker, remember your goddamn arithmetic when we're talking about numbers. This is, okay, look, if I have 100 horsepower and I say something loses 15% to the rear wheels, how much power does it make? 85, right? Makes 85 horsepower to the rear wheels, and that math works. So 85 horsepower to the rear wheels, known parasitic loss of 15%. How much power does that thing make at the flywheel? You take 85, multiply it by 1.15, and it's 97 point something. It's not 100 because it's a margin loss. And you take the 85 and you divide it by 0.85, and that's how you get your 100 horsepower. And that's what tells you what the thing's actually making at the flywheel, and that's how you base your fueling, etc. Sorry, didn't mean to go off on that. It's just that the goddamn math that I see come across is wrong, and it drives me absolutely nuts. Next, Shawnee's saying, asking for a friend, literally. Oh, talking about a 270 cam on a 392, give it a nice enough idle to offset the low-end softness? No. Will long tube headers and a trans tune help mitigate low-end drivability? Yes. And part of that tune, by the way, is going to be driver command torque. You're going to have a lower volumetric efficiency with that cam. And at lower RPMs you will. And so you're going to need to ramp up driver command torque to get some of that snappiness back. If you don't, it's going to feel soft and you're going to have a bad time. Let's see. CFL checking in with a thumbs up. I like it. Mopar saying, what up, B? I blew my motor up. Damn. 397. That sucks, man. 397 circuit kit coming. Molar rods and crank. CP pistons still spraying nitrous. I like it. Bummer that you blew it up, but I like where you're going with this, and it's going to be a lot of fun when you get done. Shawnee, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Saying Revlon's looking fine. Actually, Revlon is looking dirty. I just got back. I was playing around with her earlier, trying to cook some of the fuel out of it. I just put a little bit different tune on it. Actually, I kind of neutered it a little bit, threw a little bit more fuel at it. Didn't mess with the NOx sensors or anything like that. Just threw a little bit more fuel at it, gave it 0.80 lambda, just to be a little bit on the safer side. In data logging, I've discovered some kind of wavering issues with fuel quality. And also to that point, yeah, I'm still getting some false knock out of it. So I actually may go in and adjust knock sensors down a little bit. At least that's what I was thinking at one point. And what I'm saying by that is knock the sensitivity down a little bit on the knock sensors. I was thinking that until it kind of dawned on me, man, look, the car in great weather has gone 10 teens with more or less this tune in it. Again, it's a little bit safer, if you want to call it that, just because I'm throwing a little bit more fuel at it. And this is way on the other side of the power band too, just to help it deal with the little bit longer shift points. So I did the time stamping with it, and in this weather, I don't know if you can tell, but it is muggy as shit. Last night it was 77 degrees and about a jillion % humidity. The card, I did a timestamp on it, the 60 to 130, and it was 6.7 something seconds. Anyway, fuel quality's been kind of wavering, and this is an older tank of gas. And just so you guys know, this is, God damn it takes me forever to get to a point. The point I'm trying to make is that if you let this E85-6, I haven't driven the car for a while. I haven't been going to the drag strip or anything like that. I've only recently been kind of playing with it, and this gas is kind of old. Anyway, I was seeing more knock than normal. I guarantee you when I put fresh gas in it, it won't do that. It's just the ethanol-based fuel does tend to start breaking down. And after about a month and a half in a gas tank, I'm not talking about in a storage tank, but in a vented or however, you know, you want to look at it in a car gas tank, it does start to degrade a little bit. So knock retard looked good. Only got up to 1 degree at one point, but leading up to that, it was a little iffy. So anyway, that's what I was doing with the car. In fact, I've got to put the drag pack on it because she is going to the drag strip tomorrow. Thank you, Sean, again for the contribution to the cause. I appreciate that. CJ saying also add ported and polished heads with the ported 392 intake manifold and stage 2 cam with long tubes and a custom tune and your 5.7 ME V8, and man, it can make over 450 at the wheels. Look, don't get on a dyno jet. Yeah, I mean, look, you can get 2 392 numbers. Okay, you can get real talk here. Okay, guys. This is with an aggressive cam, a 392 intake, long tubes, the whole shooting match. You can get one of those things to run like a 392. You can get them to actually walk away from a 392 in some cases, but you've got to be willing to put in the work and you've got to spend the money on it, because just doing one little thing here or one little thing there, it's not going to get you to the promised land. But in fact, I mean, you're just kind of piecemealing the whole thing together. So to do it right, you got to do it all. And when you do it all, get the right guy tuning it, make sure that he speaks fluent Mopar, and you'll be well on your way to having a very fun car to play with. Let me see something real quick. Hang on just a second. Riff, thank you very much, man. I appreciate the contribution to the cause, buddy. Saying just a bit, bro, man. I appreciate it, bud. Thank you very much. Get back over here. Thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, brother. K saying, hi, Master Mason. When it comes to the 70s muscle cars, is it worth modding a small block V8, or should I just do the stereotypical LS swap? My friend, that is a question that I have been asking myself with the C25. So here's the problem. LS swaps are getting a little too easy to do. You can bolt one up to a turbo 400, a turbo 350, throw in a 700 R4. It's a standalone. It's a little bit more finicky, not finicky. It's a little bit more fiddly to do than modifying your stock small block. There are some other things as far as gauges working, you know, your speedometer in particular. Gas gauge will typically, it's just got its own sending unit, but temperature gauges and things like that, you're going to have to go a different route if you want those types of gauges working. However, I will say this, what is it worth to you, I guess is what I should say. Old muscle car, are you running into vapor lock issues, which a lot of them did. In fact, almost all of them did. Real talk here on old school cars. Yeah, they would go into vapor lock, number one. And number two, reliability. I mean, my truck, I can drive it all day long. But if I park it, I've got 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. At that point, it will go into heat soak. And this is true heat soak where the fuel in the lines actually starts to boil. It's called vapor lock. The vehicle will not start unless you cool off the fuel lines. A lot of times the carburetor float bowls, intake manifold, what have you, you've got to cool that off. You've got to make sure you got bottles of water with you. But you're going to have to do some on the side of the road work to that thing if it goes into vapor lock. Fuel injected cars don't have that. The reason why, number one, it doesn't have a mechanical fuel pump. It's got an electric fuel pump that pressurizes the fuel to, say, 40 psi. At 40 psi, the boiling point of fuel goes much higher than it is at 4 psi. And even at that, you know, the fuel pump is drawing fuel in under a vacuum. So that technically lowers the boiling point, can make a problem for your feed line. If you've got a return less style, it's a bigger problem. If you got a return style, you can actually, if you're running long tubes, it makes it vapor lock 10 times worse. Anyway, you get the point that I'm trying to make. For me, I would LS swap it. I hate to say it like that. I hate to be as blunt about it, but for the money that you're going to spend on your small block, and don't let anybody fill your head full of shit. You're going to be spending money on this thing, especially if you want to do a power upgrade on it. We're talking cylinder heads, we're talking camshaft, we're talking springs, we're talking bearings or whatever. If you're going to do a full-on rebuild, you're going to be into this thing for about $1,200 in machine work. You're probably looking at another $1,000 minimum for parts. And if you're doing all the labor, then that's obviously free. But if you're not, factor in another $500 swapping that thing out and in. So that's another grand. You're looking at 35-ish, $4,000 soup to nuts. Well, you could probably LS swap that thing. Engine and trans cost you about $1,500 out of a junkyard. The labor, the pump, the everything else to install it, probably going to cost you another $1,500 to $2,000. So you're looking at about $3,500 to completely repower the thing. Now, true, you still have to get gauges. You still have to do a lot of other fiddly work. But the reality is that you are already well on your way and you get an overdrive transmission. You get all of these things. Now, granted, it's a junkyard part, right? So God only knows what's going to happen, even just short term down the road. But modern reliability is so much better. So, look, I would love to keep the 400 in my truck. But the reality is that at some time next year, all things going the way that I think they're going to go with that truck, is going to get an LS swap. No doubt about it. So let's see. CFL James saying, who makes a drag radial that isn't square? 2 sets of Mickey Thompson R's and my fillings are falling out. Makes a drag radial that isn't square. Man, I guess you're talking about just the flatness of the tire itself. It's just a matter of having the lower profile tire, really, more than anything else. And yeah, there's still a lot of steel in drag radials. You're mainly getting a compound, but man, I get it. I know where you're coming from, but I still like the Nittos. Checks in the mail, right, Nitto? For all of my daily running around and data logging needs. And I'll tell you a reason why I like Nittos too. Again, I've had them in the rain and they did fine. I've had them on the back roads out in the middle of central Texas, got hit with a monsoon, fresh set of drag radials, mind you, not an older set. They did fine. But when you're talking about a car making this much power, and we're talking about this thing, we're talking about 392s also, even the 5.7 for that matter, you can't use all the power that thing makes. They're going to light the tires up pretty much at will from a standstill. But it's when you start getting into something as powerful as this thing, where from a roll you stomp it, and again you go from 60 to 130 miles an hour in 6.5, 6.7 seconds. That's pretty crazy fast. You need a tire that's going to hook up and be safe. And that's really where those tires come into play. I've had my Z06 would wall hunt on a hard 4-3 downshift. So it gives you an idea what I was up to, by the way, with that thing. Let's see. Oh, Shawnee's hanging out with Rift about his water pump. Let's see. CJ's saying, now old school muscle cars can take mods with ease back. I was saying, heck, even the LS and Coyote V8 can take more mods than the 392 Hemi V8 can. That's not necessarily true. To be honest with you, it's actually very untrue. Old school muscle cars, you got to remember something. First of all, by today's standards, not really the best setup to have, mainly because they're designed to run on leaded fuel. Their valve seats, you've basically got to replace valve seats straight away. But, you know, throwing a cam or whatever at those things, not really going to be the best idea in the world, mainly because, I hate to tell you this, those cars had to run with kind of shitty cylinder heads back then. I mean, there were some okay heads, but look at the factory stock class. I mean, these were cars that, you know, even big blocks back then were doing really good to run high 12s. The 392 Challenger does that on stock tires. It'll run low 12s or 12.0s even on a drag radial in decent air. So, yeah, and then you start talking, you know, if you want to talk about what mods work, well, there's a lot of mods that work, but the reality is that the older cars were at such a deficit. Such a deficit, so much to where, let's put this into perspective. The 426 Hemi. Everybody knows about the 426 Hemi. Gotta love them some Hemi. 425 horsepower is what it was rated gross. That's actually not that far from the truth. In fact, one can make an argument that it should have been less. That engine net rating, which it was a net rated engine in 71, 390 horsepower. And that's actually probably a little bit optimistic. But to put other things into perspective, because you got, did it have the fan? What exhaust was on it? There's a lot that went into it. A lot of bullshit. The engine that's in my truck, I think, was rated at 250 horsepower in 71. And in 73 or 72, whatever it was, when they went to net numbers, that number, this exact same engine, went from 250 to 170 or something like that. That's the difference in percentage power that you can see straight away. So by today's standards, let's pretend like it's a 200 horsepower engine. That is a 6.6 liter engine making 200 horsepower. It's actually making a lot less, but you get what I'm coming from. Better heads, cam, intake, this, that, everything else. Yeah, it makes a lot of power, but it only makes power up to the level that the LSs make it today, realistically. Now, yeah, the older engines can make a lot of torque, and that's a function of their size. But when you've got 4-speed, 5-speed, 6-speed transmissions, it allows you to run a much more aggressive rear gear. The torque becomes it doesn't matter. You don't really, it doesn't matter anymore at that point. So anyway, factor in parts availability and durability, things like that. Next thing you know, it's a better idea for a multitude of reasons: financial, reliability, parts availability, familiarity. Now, all of that goes all in the LS favor. So I think it would be adorable to keep it a 400, and it will stay a 400 for a while. But the second that 400 starts giving me a rash of shit, it's already got a little bit of blow by. Hey, it runs great, just needs a rebuild. So there you have that. Oh, Rip's hanging out with Sean. CJ's saying, man, B, have outstanding facts, brother. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Shawnee's saying, how much did the lower pulley and the tune reduce the value of my Hellcat from a stock Hellcat? I'm going to try to keep this Hellcat till I'm how old as dirt, but just curious. Not really. I wouldn't say that it reduced the value of it. There's an ask for every seat. I wouldn't say it raised the value, but I certainly wouldn't say that it lowered it any. Let's see. Albert saying, what's your take on no-eads exhaust diverters? Any of those exhaust diverters, talking about the ones, just the dumps? I mean, they're all about the same if that's what we're talking about. I don't really pay a lot of attention to those, but only because we've had them fail. It's always a lot of fun. But had one of them fail. So the butterflies, you know, they would go through their check sequence. One of them failed. It was stuck almost halfway open. Another one failed completely closed. I think it was on the same car. I don't know. I've had issues with some of those. Anyway, they're all fine. Got a little bit squirrel. Sorry. They're good for the most part. Most people don't have any problems with them. I would just say that if you're going to run a set of those things, they can be a little bit of a pain in the ass, but they're fun for making noise. So that's all I care about. Yarmir is saying, will 305s fit on the stock 392 rims? Yes, they will, but you're going to have a goofy looking footprint. They're going to stick out a little bit, which looks pretty good, kind of an aesthetic thing. But here's the problem. These are for 305 35s. Keep in mind, I run 305 35s on the Hellcat, but I am running replica wheels, the 10.5-inch wide wheels. The problem is that when you bulge out the sidewall, the contact patch will get a little bit screwed up, okay? Because it doesn't just kind of go flat. It'll actually kind of bulge it out a little bit. So, and I've done patch testing with this too, by the way, where I've just taken the car out and run different pressures to see where I get just that flat patch. And what ends up happening is when you pull them out, the bottom kind of kicks up a little bit. So you've got to run more pressure and you get kind of this funny looking the contact patch. It's not that big of a deal. I've run them at the drag strip. I ran 1130 with my 392 SRT full weight. So, you know, they work fine in that environment. I would just say that overall, they just don't handle as well. They don't feel as good. So if you're going to run 305s and you've got a set of stock 392 wheels, you're kind of screwed because you got the hyper black wheels. To get the right contact patch, you have to go with the replicas. Replica doesn't make a hyper black wheel, so you'd have to go a full set of reps for it to be a matching set. Anyway, long way to say that yes, they will work, but the contact patch is going to suck. Jason Leonard said, okay, my landlord called animal control on me for sticking a beagle in my 2016 Scat trunk. Showed the officer how I put the seat down and turned the AC up. Charges drop. Player hater Ford guy. He's talking about with giving the dog the cubby hole back there. I grew up in the back of a vet. So let's see. Jerry's asking, can you put a 17 by 10.5 rim on a Scat Pack Challenger, not wide body, 1320 specifically? Actually, yeah. You can. You may need to get shorter sway bar end lengths. B Woody sells the good ones. But yeah, you can. And they're called Recluse wheels, and they're made by Weld, I believe. Anyway, and those are the 10.5s. I've got 9.5s on the back of mine. Cleaver's saying, damn, quarantine won't let me hit the strip, but I never thought about the fact that my IATs are high while idling, even though I put the true CAI on with PCM and TransTune. I'm losing power at launch. Yep. Losing a little bit. Take a look at those IATs. That's the main thing. Cleaver's saying, I want to see the gains, if any. No throttle body or cleaned up intake yet, though. Gotcha. Rift is asking a good question. Is it true that if you turn your boost up enough on a Hellcat that an aftermarket intake does start helping in power? Short answer to that is absolutely yes, correct. If you run 733 pounds of boost, then at that point, I believe a cold air will start to work. Actually, I can't tell you the number because each car is a little bit different. Each combination, I should say, is a little bit different. It could be a stock blower, it could be a Whipple, it could be a Kenny Bell. Each one of those has different characteristics, but yes-ish. So let me tell you how this broke down. We had two almost identical Bravo cars on the dyno. The Bravo package is upper and lower pulley, E85, cat delete setup. It's basically an optimized stock supercharger setup on E85 though. So, I mean, it has to be on E85 here. On a Mustang dyno, this is kind of a known 800 horsepower to the rear wheels package. Certainly known for running mid-nines. Basically, it's a mid-9 package. Running a JLT CAI did nothing on the dyno at that power level versus a stock airbox with a stock filter. And when I say nothing, I mean, we're not talking about numbers in the 2-3% range. If it picked up anything, well, picture like this. That car had long tubes, 2-inch long tubes on it, and had a CAI versus a car that had stock manifolds and a stock airbox. And there wasn't enough of a difference between the two to really get out of the noise of the dyno itself. In other words, yeah, there's a correction factor with the dyno, but ambient temperature, being what ambient temperature is, can cause some minor fluctuations. Barometric pressure can cause minor fluctuations with the car itself and how it is fueling and working within that tune. So to answer the question, this is a car that had two perceived advantages: JLT cold air intake and 2-inch long tube headers. And I want to say that car it had a 262 gear, the stock gear, versus the 309. The 262 gears will typically cheat the power up a couple of numbers, not a lot. Let's call it 3 or 5, just to give you something to work with. I think the number was 9 between the two. So roughly 1%. Not enough of a difference to call. But let me take that a step farther. So if you're going to daily the car, leave the stock airbox in with the stock filter, maybe throw in a K&N, but I didn't see any difference on my car with a K&N. Don't think you would either. Again, that paper filter does a damn good job, man. I hate to tell you this, but aftermarket's really got a lot to cover up for it. But I have run my car, little Miss Revlon back here, up against her equivalent with a more aggressive tune, a little bit more timing, but also more heavily fueled sister, so to speak. And this car ended up being quicker with the stock airbox than that one was with the JLT. JLT intake, little bit more timing, little bit more fuel, pulled a little harder on the big end. But we're talking a mile an hour, and we're talking fractions of a mile an hour at best, if there was going to be any difference at all. Same night, same drag strip. Trying to get him to the same weight. That car, I think, weighs 40 pounds more than this one because Revlon's always been a bit of a waif. And that's it. So, I mean, I'm trying to give you the absolute best data that I can. And again, we're talking two cars that were making a lot of power, no difference. We're talking on cars like mine, which are basically not that far away from stock power, and no real difference there either. So I'm giving you a bit of a spectrum. You bring that down to an NA combination where there's not near the airflow requirement and where it's going to be potentially sucking in a lot of wash air, that radiator wash air. That's even worse. So anyway, getting back to, I hope that answers the question. Sean saying Jerry 1320, I run 17 by 10 and a half wheels on his drag tires. Oh yeah, that's right. Sean, he is running 10 and a halves. Let's see, Rich saying same. HU37 saying there's a company that claims their shorty headers increase up to 13 horsepower and a narrow RPM range. Yep, it's called Hooker Headers makes those. What they don't tell you, you also need their CAI and throttle body, 6 horsepower peak and 200 per. Yeesh. Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff like that. I've seen shorty headers. Actually, I've seen shorty headers do pretty well. But again, things that don't show up on the dyno that get you ET tunes, transmission tunes for sure. The funny thing is with these Mopars, this is the weird thing about Mopars too. Talk about bucking the trend. The weird thing with Mopars is that you can put a mod on the car and not get any gain whatsoever. You can put a tune on the car, pick up just a little bit of power. We're talking 15 horsepower at the most, right? Maybe 15. But it's across the board and a trans tune. And that car will go from running 12 O's or 12 ones to 1150s, 1160s. It's just the funniest thing. You'll get 50 or 65 horsepower worth of gain out of only 15 horsepower and no gain whatsoever out of a claimed 30 horsepower gain out of long tubes. I'm telling you, you cannot make this kind of dumb shit up, but that's how the Mopar stuff works. And that's again why, this is the other thing, as far as why I don't have sponsors, kind of circling back around. I guess we'll get to keep circling back on topic every once in a while here. You know how we work around here. I'll put out an APB to any manufacturer that wanted any part tested. I've said, look, to anybody that would watch my video, if you got a set of long tubes, send them to me. I'll test them. This doesn't necessarily hold true now, especially when I had Shalandra. If you had long tubes, I'll test them. If you've got an intake manifold, I'll test that. If you've got throttle body, I'll test that. I will be your independent testing guy. I'll do this shit for free. Okay, I'll do it on my time off. This Saturday, we'll be testing cold air intake 1, 2, 3. We'll be testing this whatever, that whole deal. Not one person ever took me up on that. Not that they would. I mean, not that these people are watching my channel, right? But it never ever came down to, okay, yes, I'm gonna. In fact, when I've called folks to ask them for stuff, when I was actually looking to try to test stuff, saying, hey, I work at a shop, I've got free access to a dyno, here's my YouTube channel, what can you do for me? Crickets every single time. So, nobody loves me. Anyway, Robert's saying, I put on long tube batteries on my Challenger and my engine light came on because of the O2 sensors. Any advice on how to get rid of that light? Yeah, actually what you can do is, Shawnee's already got on it. Sorry to say you have to unlock the computer and get it tuned. Hemi tax in full form, of course. Yeah, so if you're running catless, you can try to get away with the MIL eliminators. Basically, it's a device that simulates the rear O2s working. I think HHP sells them. There's that you can look into, but realistically, to get the most out of those headers, you're going to need to tune for them because the computer is looking, it knows when the cylinder fires and it knows the amount of time that pulse is going to take to get to that O2 and in stock form. That's how sophisticated these cars are, by the way. If you don't adjust that timeline, because now your O2 is further downstream, it's going to take longer for that pulse to go from the header, from the exhaust port to that O2 because of the header and the distance and the length that it is now away from it. It can sometimes piss them off. Typically it doesn't, but if it's mad because it's looking for rear O2s and there's no variance, MIL eliminator is what you're going to need to get. And again, that's going to be found over at HHP if memory serves me correctly. Let's see. Ken saying, thank you for what you do. That's why I've been following you since your SRT 392. Man, Ken, I appreciate that a ton. Really do. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. George Let's Be saying, are you going to try the new Nitto Tri-5 2s? I probably will. I am up for tires on this car. I need a new set, and those look like they're going to fit the bill pretty well, so we're going to give them a shot and see how well they do. Rip's saying that he's sticking with Mickey Thompson's. For sure. Listen, I mean, for the track use, Mickey's the only way I'd go. HU37 saying, watch out for the words up to when it comes to horsepower increase. It's a good thing the BS you're being given doesn't have mass. There wouldn't be room for you to sit in front of your PC. Indeed. We're saying, I think it's hilarious how often intakes come with a dyno sheet showing they add 25 horsepower or something like that. True that, man. What's funny about that is they never, like, if you call them up and say, look, man, you said I was going to pick up 25 and it didn't. They go, well, we never said it would pick up 25. Say up to 25. In what testing? In what fucking reality did it pick up 25? That's the other thing. You're selling me an intake for a 392 Hemi, and you're going to tell me that that thing's going to pick up any amount to the rear wheels. Or if you're going to tell me it's going to pick up any amount in ET, it had better do it. I had one guy tell me that, oh yeah, this intake's definitely going to pick up ET. And I'm going, yeah, I don't think you want to do that, dude. Anyway, it's one of the intakes, you know, I would buy them, use them for testing, and then typically sell them or give them to people or whatever. And I just didn't have any use for them. It's one of the few times that I actually sent an intake back. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here. I got a few momentum, but it's one of the few times I sent something back because the guy started getting a little bit too hypey with how that thing is going to work. So anyway, good quality though. And again, thank you, Ripped. I appreciate the contribution to the cause. Let's see. Anton Brown saying, what size injectors would you run on a 392 and E85 tune and cat delete? I would run 650cc injectors. Would be the way that I would go. I might cheat them up a little bit to 750s, but you don't need to go any bigger than that. But you will need fuel injectors. So folks that I would call Fuel Injector Connection, Fuel Injector Clinic, or Fuel One here in Houston. If you call Fuel One, talk to Keith. It's another situation where dude ain't paying me, but he is an awesome guy. Very honest. Again, Keith over at Fuel One in Houston, Texas. Give him a shout. Tell him I said, what up? And he ain't going to give you any better price, but he at least gets you taken care of. But he actually gives everybody really good pricing over there. Flow tests everything. He just got in a new flow checker tester thing. Anyway, it's cool watching that thing work too, especially when the injectors are jacked up because they look like giant squirt guns going off in that beaker. So anyway, that's who I would give a shout to for your injector needs. And again, Riff, thank you, buddy. Sean saying C8 versus Charger Hellcat drag racing and roll racing. It did not seem as good for the Hellcat as I was hoping. Your thoughts? C8 versus Charger Hellcat. So here's the thing. You're kind of walking into the Corvette's wheelhouse here. When we're talking about roll racing, C8 does pretty well in that endeavor. A car's making pretty good power, but I haven't seen all of them. I've seen a few different races, and you know, it's not like the Hellcat is just up and, you know, hid from the vets, but they're fairly close, and they're going to be fairly close. They ET about the same, and you got to remember that Challenger, Charger, whatever. Its wheelhouse is in that launch. You've got to chase that Mopar down to beat it. Mopars make people make mistakes. And At least they used to, and you don't have to worry too much about that now with the automatic or DSG or whatever you want to call those transmissions. But at any rate, don't really have a lot of thoughts on it because they're all fast in their own way. And, with as slippery as that vet is, to be honest with you, man, with my Z06, I used to go sniping after Hellcats for roll racing. So, and that was just a little cam Veraram intake, long tube header vet. So, roll racing isn't these cars' strong suit. As a matter of fact, funny you mention that. When I was out tonight, one of the things that I noticed about my car was, it is 75 odd degrees, 77, 80 degrees, whatever it is. It's funny. It's definitely not boost weather, and the car feels slow. Not that it's slow, but it's just obviously not as snappy because the weather's not there. And again, it's heavy, and you take into account the fact it's as aerodynamic as a brick, and I don't know. Still, I'd still rather own one of these than that vet. Jerry 1320 saying, Shawnee, I really think it was biased for the C8, but again, I'm biased for the Hellcat. Absolutely. Robert saying, mine is a 2010 with 23,000 miles. I was told I didn't have to unlock the PCM. No, you don't have to unlock the PCM if it's a 2010. Only 15 and up. Ripped is saying, yeah, I don't think you need to unlock the 2010, but you do need a tuner. Yes, you do. Rip saying, might be wrong, but I do have it, 2009 SRT8 that I did that with. Yeah, 2010, you shouldn't have to unlock it. Destroy saying, Robert, you can put O2 spacers on it. It will not throw a code and do that cheaply. Some of those, the spacers, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It's a cheap try. So definitely give it a whirl. See if you can get some love out of those as well. Speedfreak93 said, hey, BSC, one of the top known tuners using flex fuel on Trackhawk tuning seems to be working. Is this the future? And what is your opinion on street tuning versus dyno tuning? Is street tuning sufficient enough? Good questions. I am not convinced yet that the flex fuel tuning has been sorted out. I know that there are, well, let's put it like this. Livernois had a flex fuel protocol for the Trackhawk that was working-ish. The only problem is we had one of those at the shop, not because we wanted it there. Let me tell you this, that I don't even want to get into this. Anyway, sometimes the people ruin the cars for you. But anyway, that Trackhawk started to develop a weird hot start issue, almost like it was going into vapor lock of all things. But strangely enough, it actually kind of lost the tune. And this is something that's, I know that there's folks working on it. I know there's people that swear by it. I've been a little bit removed from it only because it's not in the HP Tuners protocol to where it just flat out works. So the tables are in certain operating systems to where you can run the flex fuel. The problem is how the system registers flex fuel. Anyway, long story short, there are some issues where you can, the OS will be cool with everything provided with flex fuel. This is my understanding of it, provided that your knock sensor sensitivity isn't messed with, because it's looking for specific knock at that point. But there's other things that it's looking for in fuel trims also. It's looking for how much fuel does it have to run in the thing for it to actually develop a stoichiometric value. So that's a derived number, so to speak. It actually has to come up with that number. It's going to go off of an algorithm, but it has to come up with that number. So it's blind in essence. And what I mean by all of this is it's not like the GM system where it has a sensor and it senses an amount of E85. basically what I'm trying to say is until they incorporate that sensor into the system, it's going to be very difficult to really hone in on the flex fuel capabilities. It's not that it can't do it. It's very capable of doing it. It's just that they haven't quite got it right yet. And I haven't seen it right. I've heard of it. I got guys that have sent me links to things, and I get it. There's some folks that have got it sorted out, but I just haven't seen it work flawlessly yet. Long term. I'm not talking like it works now and you go drive it and it's neat and it works after a couple of tanks of gas. I'm talking about it has to work that way for a year for me to start really getting excited about it. So anyway, I've just seen too many issues with it. But then again, that was a while back. So we'll see. As far as street tuning versus dyno tuning. So here's my thought. I do both. I validate my dyno tunes on the street, but more importantly, they're validated at the drag strip. The reason why is I can't tune the transmission reliably for the 1-2 shift, and especially for the 1-2 and the 2-3 shift on a 392 car or especially on a Hellcat, unless I have a prepared track and the thing can actually dead hook, because you get into tire slip and that will screw with predictive shift algorithms and things like that, make the thing shift a little bit early or a little bit late. So in that respect, I've got to have a track that I can have the car dead hook on, get a solid data stream out of it, get a couple of passes back to back, and then I can make some changes on transmission shift timing, things like that. Now, that being said, for timing wide open and just for drivability, you kind of would want to do street tuning, especially for drivability. You want to get the thing to temperature. You want to have the freedom to just drive the thing around with the hood down, with just how the car is going to be driven in general. Problems with drivability can come up under those conditions. Partial throttle response comes into play here. How does the thing feel to drive under partial throttle shifting? Those are the things that you have to validate. You have to be street validated. And in some cases, it's not like you're just going to drive the thing around the block. I know that Alex will spend a week with a car in some cases, driving it, making small changes, drive it some more, make some more small changes, try to narrow it down and get it just right. And when it comes to transmission tuning, that's the only way you can do it, because transmission tuning is subjective, where engine tuning is objective, in that some folks like their cars to shift a little later under partial throttle. Some folks like them to shift earlier or firmer or softer. You kind of get the idea here. So that's the part really that can end up taking more time. It's not in the objective, because the objective is fairly cut and dry. That's science and math. When it comes to the subjective of the transmission, you can't do that on a dyno at all. So Donald Power saying, I'm so confused. All that number stuff, but just leaving the 5.9 Magnum going, your basic 5.7 Hemi, I would pick up 100 plus horsepower if I go with the 2013 Hemi. It's 140 horsepower more. Absolutely. No, and that's the thing. I mean, you look at the old school stuff versus the new school stuff. It's night and day, man. I mean, it's not even close. And you're right. It's like another 100-odd horsepower. It's like bolting a freaking centrifugal supercharger to a 5.9. It's just not even close. Ryan's asking if they bumped up the tech card price at the local track when they reopened. I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of, but I'm going to be finding out tomorrow. Don Power saying, I sure would love the 392 gears in the lighter Dakota. It's 3,800 pounds. Fun. Grab the 392 exhaust. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, by the way, I weighed the C25 and she weighs exactly 4,300 on the money with a full tank of gas. Let's see. Shawnee is saying, without a tune, I made 5 horsepower and 5 torque with long tube headers on a 392. However, it made more power under the curve and definitely felt quicker than the dyno told me for $1,300. Well, that's kind of what I was getting at. 5 horsepower, 5 foot-pounds of torque, and a little bit more throttle response underfoot. 5 horsepower isn't 40. 5 horsepower isn't 30. It's not 25. It's not 20. It's not any of the claims that anybody had made, and tuning it with the long tubes, it's the same. So you pick up 5 horsepower, 5 foot-pounds of torque, and a little bit of drivability out of them. That's it. So going back to the claims, which are horse shit, I mean, it really should be illegal. Isn't it illegal? I don't know. It's a lie. Or at least it's a lie by omission, which is probably worse because you've got to think more about that. Anyway, I think you get the idea, but still. Brian G, thank you very much. I appreciate the contribution. Doesn't have a message with it, but I thank you very much for the contribution, my friend. Let's see. Ripped is hanging out with CFL. Let's see. Thank you again, Brian. Rick is saying, was it worth all the money to get that much power, Sean? Just curious if it was worth it for you. Sean's saying no. But with the tune, it helped, and the sound was so nice, but the 392 Hemi tax was killing me. Well, there's that too. You know, we're not even going to get into the cost of it because every time I start talking about the cost of these things, everybody starts getting real butthurt and gets all up in a flutter about the fact that, yeah, this stuff does cost money, number one. And number two, you really do start to encroach on the cost of a Hellcat with every modification that you make to a 392. Just remember that I've said this before. If there are instances where modding a 392 makes 100% sense. If number one, you want to stick with an NA, I get it 100%. Easier to maintain. Just more simple, purest form, all that. I get it 100%. In fact, I agree with a lot of it, to be honest with you, even given the fact that I'm a Hellcat owner. Second to that, though, if you're talking about everything that you want to do with that 392, this is picture like this. You throw the kitchen sink at it, you're going to be into it for about $7,000. That's cam headers, some form of tuning. You might throw pulleys at, lower crank pulley, whatever. You're going to end up into that thing a decent chunk of change with a cam and lifters and all that stuff. That's just how it is. But that $7,000 could have also gone to the down payment on a Hellcat. And I get it. If you're not into the Hellcat thing, I understand. I wasn't into Hellcats for a while myself, by the way. In fact, I was kind of anti-Hellcat at one point. So, go figure. But here we are. So if you're in that camp, by all means, go for it. All I can say is please stick with the folks that are experienced with this. Stick with the folks that are not going to try to steer you wrong. Stick with the folks that have a track record. Stick with the folks that have been there and done it over and over and over again with track results, with dyno results. These are the things that you're going to have to lean on. This is the only thing that you have to lean on in the Mopar community. And also keep in mind that for every Mopar with a cam, there's 30 or 40 LSs with a cam, probably 50 LSs with a cam out there. No joke. Let's see. CJ saying Ford just released the 2024 Bronco. The bad news is that there's no V8 option. There's only EcoBoost engines like the 4-cylinder and the 6-cylinder engines. That's me checking out on that topic. With that news, CJ saying, what LS engine do you plan on swapping in? Anything with an L or an S in front of its name will work. So a 4.8, 5.3, 6.0, 6.2, it really will not matter for that truck, especially if I end up going single turbo with it. In my experience, the only real difference between a 4.8 and a 5.3 when you start messing with stuff like what I'm playing with is about maybe 15 feet in terms of total burnout length. So in other words, leave the 430 gears in it, go 5.3 with a 4L60, build the 4L60, just make the 5.3 run and be reliable. It'll still light the tires up at will with those gears because the truck only weighs 4,300 pounds, which is lighter by comparison than the contraption that it came out of. Maybe throw a set of long tubes at it. At some point in the back part of the garage, build another 5.3 with a little bit better pistons and rods, a little bit of ring gap. I'd leave the heads alone. Get it ready to go in the truck with turbos, fuel system, et cetera, make about 700 to the wheel, and that'll be about it. So that's kind of the plans for the truck long term. And I'll tell you this, my wife has fallen in love with that truck. So for me, it's just about having dumb fun. I'm really not looking for a number. I just want it to entertain me, and be somewhat safe in the process, about as safe as a 72 vehicle is going to be. So, I had big plans on just building a burnout truck out of it. And because it's a long bed, they do great burnouts for distance. Way better than the short bed stuff does. A lot more stable in a straight line. So who knows? Get this thing built, get it running, have it reliable to where it doesn't heat soak and vapor lock and do all that. Shit, maybe find another one and just build something nasty out of that. Who knows? But so far, that's where we're at with it. Let's see. Ethan saying full bolt-on E85, 11 to 14 Coyote versus full bolt-on E85 8-speed Scat Pack. Full bolt-on E85 8-speed Scat Pack gets out on the Coyote in a major way. Out of the hole, Coyote really struggles to try to reel in the 392, only to probably be left a little bit short at the end of the drag strip. Leave it to a roll race, and the Coyote may eventually come around the Mopar, but it's going to take a little bit. Now, you go 15 and up, and things are going to be a little bit different. I did a pretty good job of fending off a lot of full bolt-on Mustangs with my 392, but I will say this, they were reeling me in on the big end by a little bit. I think I only lost to one. And that car was on E85 full bolt-on 15, and that was a damn strong running car with a really good driver. Let's see, Rich saying, I noticed there's not many options for aftermarket heads when it comes to our cars compared to other cars. Why is that? The reason why there's not is because the factory heads flow freaking Niagara Falls style with the Mopars. You're looking at 340, 300, minimum of 330 CFM out of the modern Hemi heads. They flow their asses off. Even the 5.7s flow like 315. They flow what race heads used to hope to flow. And to be honest with you, to get any more flow out of them doesn't really do any good. That you just can't really do anything with it, especially with the intake manifolds. Secondly, it's a tumble port head, which means that air just kind of comes in, and gulps. It's not a high velocity head. So whenever you start to open up these types of heads, you get a drop in velocity, which means that you lose drivability, you lose snappiness and throttle response, things like that. So because of that, aftermarket manufacturers look at the heads and just go, not really feeling it. Sean Hooper over at Hooper's Heads is also an instructor over at School of Automotive Machinists. He's got his own business. He's got a great CNC program for these heads in terms of what they make or what they can make, on a nitrous application with, the Holley intake and, obviously with, the cam and just a host of other supporting modifications. You can pick up some decent power with them as a package, but as far as just bolting them in and running the car, not really going to pick up a lot. Again, because you already have so much head flow at play for you. Shawnee said, I'm too spoiled on fuel injected drivability to go back to a carburetor. Sounds like you are as well. I haven't owned a carbureted car for a daily driver for 30 years and I don't miss it. Look, man, I'll tell you this. If you only drove this truck to work, right? Got out, did your work thing, got back in the truck and came home, and you didn't really get stuck in traffic, like heavy traffic, you'd never notice it or you'd never really worry about it. But yeah, for, you know, any type of what you would consider normal driving, this thing's going to be a pain in the ass. And a lot of that also, again, has to do with modern fuel. You know, E10 has a lower boiling point. And because it has a lower boiling point, whereas it may not have gone into vapor lock before, now it will. And that's a bit of a problem. So I'm going to try a couple of fixes. I'm going to try a Phalonic spacer on the carburetor, 1/2 inch, just to kind of get it up a little bit. So Phalonic spacer on the carburetor. It needs a different set of headers desperately. It's got the wrong headers on it. So motor mounts, it's going to need motor mounts. So motor mounts, get a different set of headers with a different exhaust, and that may cause all the problems to go away. But, you know, that's, again, it's an expensive proposition. The truck needs a lot more work than just that right now. Anyway, looking to get it over to Doc Diff as soon as I can for the springs and for the trans. So anyway, we got a lot in the works. Just got to make it happen. That's it. HU37 saying old school muscle cars lose much more of their drivability than modern cars. I remember 500 horsepowers back in the day would get around 6 to 8 miles per gallon around town, about 12 on the highway, and give you a lumpy idle. That's true. That's a lot of them did that from the factory. And then he goes on to say the modern engine is so much more efficient. Well, yeah, modern engines are, but transmissions are as well. You got to remember, cars back then didn't have overdrive transmissions. They relied on either very, very short gearing, like a 262 rear end. But in this case, you had to have a 262 just to turn the thing down to, like, you know, 2,500 RPM on the freeway. So a lot of that had to do with that. So it killed efficiency. You're still running a little bit too high RPM on the freeway. Just a lot of goofy stuff like that. Modern transmissions have saved engines more than anything else. CJ said, if I had the money and the skills, I would love to swap a 5-liter Coyote into the 96 F-150. They'd run good. Ripped is asking, talking to Ethan, if like to run this race with just an 18 manifold E85 and intake, I'll walk through 92s with no problem in the 14 GT. And that's the thing, with just a little bit on the highway. Yeah, I mean, you're definitely gonna gun down a 392. That's just the way that it works out. In fact, if you're not, something's wrong with the car. At the drag strip or from a dig, obviously it's a different story. You've got a lot of real estate you got to make up on the back half of that track. Most of the time, in my experience, for the older cars, the Mustangs just didn't quite have it. For the newer cars, pretty good chance the Mustang's going to come around the back half, but it would take the entire track for that to happen. It's always a fun race. Let's see. Rip saying that his replica wheels did not come with SRT center caps. Do you know if the size, if they'll work? Yeah. Those are replicas, and they've got my old SRT center caps in them. So, yep. Center caps work great. Sam saying, I hope Herman gets better. Herman is better, and he is back at home recuperating. So thoughts and prayers to my brother from another mother, Herman. I know he's doing well, though. Riff saying, Recluse wheels are made by Raystar, by the way, and have a very good price to them for what you get. Yeah, they're good wheels. Here's the other thing I like about the Raystar stuff. I get that they're heavy. I know it. I know they're heavy. They're heavy. They're heavy. I get it. Okay, fine. Thing is, though, is they're robust, and they work well for vehicles of this weight. So I would rather have a little bit of heft and have the durability than go the opposite direction. Let's see. CJ's hanging out with, oh, wait, here we go. Have you heard of a Restomod HU37? Let's see. Oh, damn. Ken with the 499. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for the contribution to the cause, my friend. Also, thank you to Yarmir, man. I appreciate that. He's asking, what is a good drag rim size and drag tire for an 08 SRT8 Charger modded to over 600 horsepower? Well, let's see. Frankly, I would stick with the 17 by 9.5 Raystar rears with Mickey Thompson 305 45 17s. That's what I run on mine. Holds it just fine. Dead hooks on a prep track. I've run 147s to 149 60 foot. So that's the route that I would go. They do great. And again, durable, easy to come by. You know, you can find them on forums. A lot of times, you know, guys will sell them on or go with a different look or whatever. They work great. So that's the way I would go. See, Albert, thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, saying thank you for hosting these chats, B. Thank you for hanging out with us, brother. Appreciate that. Let's see. Bear with me here just a second, guys. I'm going to take care of my super chat, guys. Let's see. Oop, time out, getting back over here. Let's see. Here we go. CJ, have you heard of Restomod? No. Let's see. Wonder how a big block would be with an 8 or a 10 speed transmission. This is Xcash. Man, they do fine. You know, they just you end up wasting a lot of that big block feel. But I mean, honestly, Hellcat is a perfect idea of what a big block would feel like with an 8 or a 10 speed automatic. I mean, it's got the same torque profile as a very strong, you know, say 500 cubic inch engine. So it's kind of the way it acts with that supercharger, and they would do just fine. If you had the money to put one behind it, it's actually a pretty good idea. Rip saying, I hope it was okay to delete that for you. I don't know what you deleted, but what did it say? I have no idea. But it was bad. Yeah. Let's see. Ken, again, thank you very much. Albert is asking, would a Hellcat lower air intake help on my 2011 392? I can't get the ram effect because headlight lens don't pop out. Will it mess with my air velocity? Is there any good workaround for the headlight issue? Well, not really a good workaround for the headlight issue. Will a Hellcat lower intake help out on the 2011 392? Not by much, because you don't get the headlight. And really the headlight's just there in your respect just to kind of help to cool that inlet flow. I would say throw a K&N drop in on it and call it good, brother. That's what I would do if it were mine. Let's see. Rift is saying, a good example is your car and Racer X's car both have the stock intake and both are doing damn good. Yes, they are indeedy. Some Ferrari guys saying CAIs at the track probably not worth it, but for roll racing they are probably worth it. You know, he's saying I would guess that the thing is that look, when I have data logged those intakes, one thing that I look at is the KPA of the intake manifold. What that is it is, and what that KPA is relative to ambient barometric pressure. And so let's put that into perspective. Let's say that, and KPA is kilopascals, by the way. It's a measurement of air pressure and how that is relative to the intake manifold. So let's say your everyday average KPA is 100 kilopascals. At wide open throttle, you want, in an ideal world, in a fantasy world, you would see the same KPA in the manifold that you saw outside. In other words, zero restriction, zero vacuum in the manifold itself. But that's really not the case. So how do you mitigate that? Well, you mitigate that in two different ways. Either you make the intake manifold itself flow much better. You remove any restriction in front of the throttle body that would cause it to have a vacuum in the manifold. Or you add boost, which would positively fill that manifold. So in other words, instead of your KPA being 100, KPA of 150 would basically be 7 and some change pounds of boost, because 150 would be 50% of 100, 100 being 100% of 14.7. 14.7 divided by 2 is 7.35. So it'd be 7.35 pounds of boost at 150 KPA in the manifold. Hopefully that helps to illustrate kind of where these numbers are coming and what they signify. So wide open throttle, KPA in the manifold may only be 94. 93, at best 96 kPa. So there's still a little bit of a vacuum. In my manifolds, I try to get it under, or I try to get somewhere around kPa, somewhere around 98. So I'm trying to find just a couple of percentage points better. I have never noticed any difference, and this is really more to the point. This comes down to, I don't know what I'm talking about, really. Okay, so when I have data logs and I'm specifically looking at a freaking 1 or 2% variance in kPa on the intake manifold, one intake versus the next, after I personally am the guy that ported the intake manifold. Anyway, I've never seen a kPa variance just with the intake alone, unless it was the stock 392 paper air filter versus the Hellcat air filter. That's it. Or maybe a K&N versus the stock. That's the only time you would ever see a slight difference. The point of all of this is that the manifold itself can be more of the restriction than the inlet intake, whatever it is, on the inlet side. So cold air intake, aftermarket box intake, drop-in air filter, all of those didn't ever really net or yield much of a difference, or at least not a difference above and beyond what known control performance parts were able to achieve. So anyway, I hope that helps you out. I mean, I've got hard data on that. So hopefully that helps you. Steven saying, I just bought SRT. God, I love it. I like that. Canada guy saying, how's it going to be? What's up, Canada guy? It finally got the old 6.1 out and tearing up the streets. I like it. You guys thawing out up there finally. HU37, be careful when it comes to product reviews. Many of them are written by the publisher's sponsor. You are misled into believing the review. You are absolutely 100% right on that. Oh, CJ's is saying that his 96 5-liter with 200,000 miles is going strong. He's only had to replace the starter. I like that. Let's see. Oh, HU is hanging out with CJ. Let's see. R is saying, what about power to weight ratio? Well, that's a big portion of what we do here is improving power to weight ratio. But what part of power are you talking about, Ara? Are you talking about torque to weight? Or are you talking about horsepower to weight? To some, it can mean different things. So, power to weight ratio is obviously going to be a huge indicator of how that car is going to accelerate. But just because something has a good power to weight may not mean that it's got a good torque to weight. Older Ferraris come to mind where they make great horsepower, but no torque. So they're just kind of lackluster unless you're really wringing them out. HU's hanging out with CJ. Jerry's saying, I've been noticing people buy open intake boxes for the new Scat Packs, which have the old Hellcat hood, and swearing by the covers for heat extractors for the rain. That's something necessary. Just curious. I actually like the heat extractor hoods on the Hellcats. In fact, I like them more than I like the snorkel intakes. They work fine. I wouldn't say that they work great. I mean, people go, oh yeah, the filter is right there by the vent. And I'm going, yeah, it's a heat extractor. You got heat coming out of the vent right there. It's not a good idea to put an air filter right there where the heat's coming out, but it certainly doesn't hurt anything realistically. And to be honest with you, in the rain, a lot of those things come with covers that go over those vents. So I know the JLT does for sure. Let's see. But yeah, the cover, I would say it's necessary. I mean, it depends on how much rain you get caught in and all of that. But yeah, I would say you definitely would want to have a cover over it. Just keep that filter from getting saturated. HU saying the only difference between exaggeration and fraud is that the latter has a penalty associated. Both of them are bullshit. Absolutely. What designates the difference between exaggeration and lying too? Haas asking, what is the best handling mod for a car that has a solid axle and leaf springs? Well, it depends on what you are doing with it. If you're talking about something like a truck, I would say a set of long bars, the actual bars that are affixed, like Stiflers for the Lightnings are the first one that come to mind. Ladder bar setups can be a little bit complicated in that there's just a lot more parts going for them. Any apparatus that helps to keep the leaf spring from wrapping under load is going to be good. And what also you're doing is you're keeping the pinion from climbing the ring gear and really arcing that snout up. So anything that'll help lock in that snout to where it's not, and this is your drive shaft, by the way. You got to be in my brain to know this stuff, but anything that helps that is going to help the vehicle along quite a bit. So, again, just any of those modifications will help. Now, as long as side to side goes, the springs themselves help to locate that the rear end in those cars. There's really not a lot you can do. There's not really like a Panhard bar setup that you can use or a Watts link that you can use in that respect. Most folks don't do that because the leaf spring itself is centering that axle. So, but keep that thing from riding pinion from riding the ring gear and you'll be in good shape. Shawnee is checking out. Saying, see you Saturday night. Good deal. I like it. NASA's checking in saying, I love a Hellcat. My SRT 392 almost made for it's cheaper for me to do a twin turbo alien system. Turbos work better with the 392. Actually, everything works great with the 392, provided you build the 392 to be able to manage the boost. And that is ring gap and maybe a set of pistons, but leave it the way that it sits and your ring gap issue is what's going to burn you. I think ring gap on those engines is like 14 or 18 thousandths. I mean, it's kind of tight. So it works great for NA, but you know. But turbos, yeah, turbos are a little bit softer on the hit. So, yeah, Helion be a fun setup for it. Let's see. NASA saying only because of the axle ratios, 370 versus 309 or 306 in a 6-speed. Let's see. I like the idea of running turbos on these things too. I'd like to see some more of that. HU37 saying you definitely have better luck finding a good 4.8 or 5.3 than a 6.0. The larger displacement engines are so much in demand. They're hard to find. What cam do you plan to use? I'm going to use one of my own cams, actually, but there's no secret as to what works. It's going to be a 220, 228 cam, just a little baby cam to where I'm still going to retain a lot of drivability. I want it to be snappy. And I want a cam that's going to work with what I may toying around with the idea of going just high compression, naturally aspirated. That kind of went by the wayside fairly quickly, but I don't want to over cam it. The fun thing about LSs is that they just follow the cam curve for the most part. And in other words, they tilt the curve no matter how you look at them. So, you know, more cam tilts the curve this way. Less cam will tilt the curve that way. Above stock anyway, talking about specifications. So nothing major, but something fun. And what I would do is if I go 4.8, it'll be, like a 216, 226 cam. If it goes 5.3, then it'll be, like I say, a 222, 228. If I do run across a 6.0, that would be like a 226, 232 type of an idea. So, just kind of my rundown on my LS spread for cams. Again, Albert, thank you, buddy. NASA saying I ran a 5.0 heading to Vegas, have a 6-speed manual. I hit 184. He couldn't run me down. Nice. That's screaming. Cuda Man saying, will an SRT 392 Challenger hang with a 02 C5 stock for stock? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, shit, yeah, no problem. It'll hang on the freeway. It'll hang with a C7 vert. I know that because I did it. So, yeah, you'll be in good shape. Edward's saying, I recently got a 13 SRT8 Challenger 6-speed with 20,000 miles on it. Had a cold air intake and long tubes with full course exhaust. I installed a catch can, BMR trailing arms, 180 T-stat, removed the clutch restrictor. That is a very fun car to drive right there, buddy. You did everything I would have done. Found a receipt from the tuner saying he corrected a lean condition. Apparently he has a Diablo tune. Probably did have a lean condition, that Diablo tune. And probably had the knock sensors jacked with quite well, maybe. I don't know. Some of the older Diablo tunes are pretty aggressive. Found oil in the manifold and keeps pulling out timing. See, Diablo tune trying to dyno tune and has way too much timing. That was also something that happened with some of the Diablo tunes. They did have too much timing. Finding oil in the manifold is very normal for those cars, so don't worry about that. And that it keeps pulling out timing. Yeah, if they did add timing to the car, depending on how much timing they did add, and based on fuel quality also, you could find yourself a short-term knock retard. So I would wholly suggest getting that car retuned by someone who speaks fluent Mopar. You know how I go with that. Dankme saying, thoughts on higher mileage 300 SRT8s, 130,000 miles. 6.1s you won't have a problem with. I've seen 6.1s with over 200,000 miles on them that guys were beating the living shit out of. So I don't think you'll have a problem with it. My main thing is, has it been maintained? Does the car pass that test? You know, if it's strong, clean, well-maintained car, mileage usually won't matter all that much at the mileage levels that you're looking at. So hopefully that helps you out. And guys, we are coming in over 2 hours. I want to thank all of y'all for hanging out with me and putting up with my monologue rant. But hopefully, you guys are asking for, some of those advice points. Hopefully I hit those well. You guys know where I'm coming from. And again, just to kind of wrap it up with the topic at hand. My goal is to bring you guys experience-based modification advice. And for those that don't get it or don't want to believe the truth, that's on them. And at one point, it's so frustrating for me that at some point, some folks will say, well, I've heard that long tubes pick up all this power. I've learned that the cold air intakes do this. And I've learned that, no, you haven't learned anything. You've only heard it. And the other thing is, fuck it. Spend your money. Please spend your money on those parts. And then take that car to the drag strip. Take it to a dyno. Take it anywhere you want. Line it up against one of you guys that are out there that have, listened to me and listen to guys like me that have been around this stuff for a while. And as we're showing them the taillights fade off into the distance, let them wonder where their money got spent. Anyway, guys, thanks again. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. Y'all stay safe out there. Wear your gloves. Wear your mask. Do your part to be all social distancing. I know it's a pain in the ass, but, the more we try, at least it'll help out a little bit, I'm sure. But that's a wrap on this one. God bless y'all. Have a great one. Adios.